Hi, this is Margo. This is Sunday, June 17th, 2018. And in my last show, I told everyone that I was working on a very special topic and that I was digging deep into research, and I'm ready to present that now. I've been praying about how to present it, and I've received guidance to go ahead and get this information out. I do believe we have a very limited amount of time left as a human race on this planet, and the more we understand the truth and know the truth, the more we can be set free from mind control, free from preconceived notions, free from old beliefs, free from all kinds of programming, and free so that we're not deceived, and we can have discernment, and we can have our eyes opened, and to know and make our own decisions about how we want to spend our last few days and weeks and possibly months. As you know, I've been doing a series of videos on methane and carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide and greenhouse gases, and I recently interviewed Dr. Guy McPherson for the second time, and we talked about methane. And I've been looking at the CAMS website and showing everyone the methane release in the Arctic, but I didn't understand why the Arctic was heating up twice as fast as the rest of the world. That just didn't make any sense to me, and I didn't understand. And whenever I don't understand something, I just ask to know the truth, and I ask to be guided, and then I'm usually guided, and I go to websites, I start doing research, and I start putting dots together. And the advantage I have is that I'm not a climate scientist. I don't have any preconceived notions or beliefs about how things should be. And by coming from a larger perspective, I put dots together from all different areas. And so, you can accept this information or think about it and see if you want to accept it as the truth. I believe it's the truth. I really do believe this is the truth. But it was interesting when I first was thinking about the warming in the Arctic. At first I thought it was from underwater volcanoes going off, because I'd seen sulfur dioxide release in the Arctic, and that didn't make any sense. But I haven't seen much of that, and that's just very occasionally. So there might be some underwater volcano activity or geologic activity going on up there that could be releasing some things. But the other thing that's going on is what I'm going to present today, and it doesn't have anything to do with natural climate. It is man-made, and I've been really thinking about how to present this, and if you need to take a break at any time during this video, just put it on pause or stop it and then come back to it. So I believe that the smoking gun in this whole Arctic warming is this area right around Novaya Zemlya. And we've got Google Earth up here, and I recently downloaded Google Earth, and I'm still learning it, so you're going to have to bear with me. but we are going to be looking at Google Earth a lot today. And without Google Earth, I would not have found the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today and backing up my theory. So let's look at where we're at with methane. And this is the latest data from CAMS. This is the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Services website. And here's the laid out flat global view. And this is from June 13th. And I think they've got 3 or 4 days of actual data in, and then it goes into the forecast period. And so what we were just looking at from Google Earth, this is Novaya Zemlya up here. And what you're seeing is a huge release of methane up here. And also, you know, along this European coast, and covering up England and covering up China, and it'll be covering up the east side of the United States and different areas. And this theory that I have can explain this methane release from all these coasts and also from Novaya Zemlya. It's all connected. So we're going to load the movie and run it just to see where we're at currently. And I want you to watch up here and see it just spewing up, and then it's spreading out over the Arctic. But it's mainly coming up from right around Novaya Zemlya from the ocean there, and also coming up. Now this is northern Siberia, Russia, and there's a lot of permafrost, and as that's melting, and the video I did yesterday, it showed how the temperatures up there are 20 degrees Celsius higher than they should be this time of year and all that. And so that's releasing a lot of methane. And you can see lots of methane release over here from Europe. And there's lots of methane release from the east coast of the United States. Now it's into the forecast period. Let's reload this movie. It's just starting over now. And you can see... and some days is worse than others. Now see it coming off the east coast here of the United States and coming out into the ocean. The red is quite high level. That's about 2,000 parts per billion. And I have a series of methane videos if you want more background on methane. My first one was on April 28th, and I went into a long explanation about where methane comes from. It occurs naturally in nature from decaying matter and things like that. And so normally it comes up in humid areas when it heats up and gets warm. That's why you're seeing it coming up out of South America where the Amazon jungle is. But it also is coming up out of the ocean, the Arctic Ocean here, because there are stored methane reserves under the Arctic sea ice that's like 1 million years old. And I tell all about that in my previous videos, so we're not going to go back over where methane comes from. If you want to find out, there's a lot of information out there, and you know, don't be lazy, do your own research. So we're going to be focusing on Novaya Zemlya today, because I do believe that's the smoking gun in this Arctic warming, and why it's warming twice as fast as the rest of the world. Twice as fast. So We're going to go back to Google Earth briefly. Now here's Novaya Zemlya. We're looking down. Here's the North Pole. This is Siberia and Russia. Here's Norway. Here's England. Here's Greenland. Then here's Canada. Here's Alaska, and the United States is down there. So I have to give you quite a bit of background. And so I didn't even know about Novaya Zemlya until I started looking at all this methane stuff, and it kept popping up right here and then around Novaya Zemlya. It was all red and coming up, and so the first place I looked, and I'm going to take you through my journey, and this is how I explore and do things. And because I'm learning as well, so I'm going to take you through my journey of how I explored this and came up with what I came up with. And we're starting out on Wikipedia, and it's just a general information page about Novaya Zemlya. I may not read the whole page to you, but I'm going to read a lot of it to you because this is very important to understand. Novaya Zemlya also means the new land, also known as Nova Zembla in Dutch, is an archipelago in the Arctic Ocean in northern Russia and the extreme northeast of Europe. The easternmost point of Europe, lying at Cape Flintsingskye on the northern island. Novaya Zemlya is composed of two islands, the northern Submarine Island and the southern Yuzhny Island, which are separated by Methane Strait. And you can see it here. They don't really okay, here's the Methane Strait. We'll enlarge this. It's not much bigger. And there's the north part of the island, and there's the southern part. So it's actually two islands kind of put together. And the Kara Sea is on the right, and the Barents Sea is on the left, and here's Russia down here. And here's the Arctic Ocean. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, it was, okay. Administratively, it is incorporated as Novaya Zemlya District, one of the 21 in Arkhangelsk Oblast, Russia. Municipally, it is incorporated as Novaya Zemlya Urban Okrug. Its population as of the 2010 census was 2,429, of which 1,972 resided in Belusha Guba, an urban-type settlement that is the administrative center of Novaya Zemlya District. So, and if we look at Google Earth, that doesn't appear anywhere. And we know why. I know why, and I will be sharing it with you. As we zoom in, here's the island. And here's where it's cut in two. That's the little separation. These are symbols for earthquakes. These little red with the zigzag on it. That's earthquakes. And the Belusha place is nowhere to be found. It's nowhere to be found. You can't find, it's nowhere on here, on this map. And that's for a reason. Now there are a few pictures that you can see. But we'll come back to this in just a minute. Let's go back to our Wikipedia page. Novaya Zemlya was a sensitive military area during the Cold War years and is still in use today. Bingo. As soon as I read that, my ears perked up. And it says the Soviet Air Force maintained a presence at Yokochevo on the southern part of the island on the westernmost peninsula. It was used primarily for interceptor aircraft operations, but also provided logistical support for the nearby nuclear test area. Now it gets more interesting. Novaya Zemlya was the site of one of the two major nuclear test sites managed by the USSR, used for airdrops and underground testing of the largest of Soviet nuclear bombs, in particular the October 30th, 1961 airburst explosion of Tsar Bomba, the largest, most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated. Well, when I read that, I was ready to stop. Of course, I couldn't stop because I go down rabbit holes. So, automatically, I'm thinking, secret military base, nuclear test sites, all this stuff. Well, there's got to be radiation. Associated with all of this. I mean, you can't have stuff like this without radiation. And radiation means heat. And radiation means lots of toxic stuff. So, it goes on. Nuclear testing. In July 1954, Novaya Zemlya was designated the Novaya Zemlya test site, construction of which began in October and existed during much of the Cold War. And it tells the different zones. Other tests occurred elsewhere throughout the islands, with an official testing range covering over half of the land mass. In September 1961, 2 propelled thermonuclear warheads were launched from Vorkuta, Sovetski, and Selekard to target areas on Novaya Zemlya. The launch rocket was subsequently deployed to Cuba. In 1963, the implementation of the Limited Test Ban Treaty, which banned most atmospheric nuclear tests. The largest underground test in Novaya Zemlya took place on September 12, 1973, involving 4 nuclear devices of 4.2 megatons total yield. Although far smaller in blast power than the Tsar Bomba and other atmospheric tests, the confinement of the blast underground led to pressures rivaling natural earthquakes. In the case of the September 12, 1973 test, a seismic magnitude of 6.97 on the Richter scale was reached, setting off an 80 million ton avalanche that blocked 2 glacial streams and created a lake 2 kilometers or 1.2 miles in length. Over its history as a nuclear test site, Novaya Zemlya hosted 224 nuclear detonations with a total explosive energy equivalent to 265 megatons of TNT. For comparison, all explosives used in World War II, including the detonations of 2 U.S. nuclear bombs, amounted to only 2 megatons. In 1988-89, Glasnost helped make the Novaya Zemlya testing activities public knowledge, and in 1990 Greenpeace activists staged a protest at the site, The last nuclear test explosion was in 1990, also the last for the entire Soviet Union and Russia. The Ministry for Atomic Energy has performed a series of critical underwater nuclear experiments near Methane Shore each autumn since 1998. These tests reportedly involve up to 100 grams of weapons-grade plutonium. So this test site is alive and well. It says they're not doing this nuclear testing anymore, but there's stuff still going on. It says that it's still active. See, status active. Site history and use 1955 to present. Nuclear test 224. That's what we know about. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about. And here's some pictures of what it looks like. It's very barren. It's very bleak. I don't know if anything would be growing there if it hadn't been blasted by radioactivity. Here's the climate. And so, there's that. So, just to see how bad that big test was, the Tsar Bomba. Let's look at the Tsar Bomba. And this is all building the case. Building the case for all this nuclear radiation in that whole area. And it didn't stay. It didn't stay in the Kara Sea. It didn't stay on Novaya Zemlya. It went everywhere. And the whole North Pole got irradiated. And the jet stream starts up there. So, I mean, the United States is not blameless, and I have downloaded a database that shows all the different nuclear tests, and Russia and the United States were about even. They both conducted over 1,100 nuclear tests within a certain period. So they were about even, so neither one are blameless, but this Tsar Bomba is just too much. And plus the place that all of these tests were done, right up there by the North Pole, and they probably figured, there's nothing up there, it's all frozen, and all this stuff can just be dumped into the ocean and be frozen and it'll be covered up. So, what the hell, why not? So, Tsar Bomba was the Western nickname for the Soviet RDS-220 hydrogen bomb, codename Ivan or Vanya, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever created. Its test was on October 30th, 1961, and remains the most powerful explosive ever detonated. It was also referred to as Kuzma's mother, possibly referring to First Secretary Nikita Khrushchev's promise to show the United States a Kuzma's mother, an idiom roughly translating to "we'll show you," at a 1960 session of United Nations General Assembly. The bomb had a yield of 50 megatons of TNT. Actually, the other websites I found said it was 58 megatons. In theory, it had a maximum yield out of 100 megatons if it were to have included a U-238 tamper. But because only one bomb was built, this was never demonstrated. The single bomb was detonated at the Sukhoi Nos Cape of Submarine Island, part of Novaya Zemlya. The remaining bomb casings are located at the Russian Atomic Weapon Museum in Sarov, and the Museum of Nuclear Weapons. Okay, now here's a picture of that bomb. Look at that. That's unbelievable. And it was dropped from an airplane on a parachute. And this mushroom cloud is seen from a distance of 100 miles or 161 kilometers. The crown of the cloud is 35 miles high or 56 kilometers mile high at the time of the picture. It weighed 60,000 pounds or 27,000 kilograms. It was 26 feet long and almost 7 feet in diameter, or 8 meters long and 2 meters in diameter. So anyway, you can read about this. This is interesting. The Tsar Bomba was flown to its test site by a specifically modified Tu-95V release plane flown by Major Andrei Domovstev. The Tu-95 bombers were designed to carry much lighter and smaller weapons, meaning the Tsar Bomba was too big to be placed on a missile and too heavy for the planes to transport it to the target with enough fuel. Taking off from an airfield in the Kola Peninsula, the release plane was accompanied by a Tu-16 observer plane that took air samples and filmed the test. Both aircraft were painted with a special reflective white paint to minimize heat damage. Despite this effort, Domovstev and his crew were given only a 50% chance of surviving the test. The bomb was attached to an 800-kilogram parachute, which gave the release and observer planes time to fly about 45 kilometers or 28 miles away from ground zero, giving them a 50% chance of survival. When detonation occurred, the Tu-95V dropped 1 kilometer in the air because of the shock wave, but was able to recover and land safely. And it created a fireball. Look at that fireball that it created. 5 miles in diameter. It was prevented from touching the ground by the shock wave, but nearly reached 10.5 kilometers or 6.5 mile altitude in the sky. The altitude of the deploying airplane. So it was dropped over the ocean, and I'm going to show you on Google Earth exactly where it was. I found it. Anyway, here's the damage that happened. All buildings in the village of Submarine, both wooden and brick, located 55 kilometers or 35 miles from ground zero within the Sukhoi Nos test range, were destroyed. In districts hundreds of kilometers from ground zero, wooden houses were destroyed, stone ones lost their roofs, windows, doors, and radio communications were interrupted for almost 1 hour. One participant in the test saw a bright flash through dark goggles and felt the effects of a thermal pulse even at a distance of 270 kilometers or 170 miles. The heat from the explosion could have caused third-degree burns 100 kilometers or 62 miles away from ground zero. Now that heat, I'm going to stop right there, that heat had to heat up the snow and ice. And if it was in October, then that was at the at the end of the melt season and beginning of the snow and ice just starting to come back. So the ground actually heated up. A shock wave was observed in the air 700 kilometers or 431 miles away. Window panes were partially broken to distances of 900 kilometers or 560 miles. Atmospheric focusing caused blast damage at even greater distances, breaking windows in Norway and Finland. Despite being detonated 4.2 kilometers above ground, its seismic body wave magnitude was estimated at 5 to 5.2. Sensors continued to identify the shock waves after their third trip around the world. Immediately after the test, several U.S. senators condemned the Soviet Union. Prime Minister of Sweden, Tage Erlander, saw the blast as the Soviets' answer to a personal appeal to halt nuclear testing that he had sent the Soviet leader in the week prior to the blast. The British Foreign Office, Prime Minister of Norway, Einar Gerhardsen, Prime Minister of Denmark, Viggo Kampmann, and others also released statements condemning the blast. Russian and Chinese radio stations mentioned the American underground nuclear test as of a much smaller bomb carried out the day prior without mentioning the Tsar Bomba test. And here's the analysis. The Tsar Bomba is the single most physically powerful device ever deployed by mankind. For comparison, the largest weapon ever produced by the U.S., the now decommissioned B-41, had a predicted maximum yield of 25 megatons of TNT. The largest nuclear device ever tested by the U.S., Castle Bravo, yielded 15 megatons of TNT. Because of an unexpectedly high involvement of lithium-7 in the fusion reaction. The preliminary prediction for the yield was from 4 to 6 megatons of TNT. The largest weapons deployed by the Soviet Union were also around 25 megatons of TNT. The weight and size of the Tsar Bomba limited the range and speed of the specifically modified bomber carrying it and ruled out its delivery by an intercontinental ballistic missile. Much of its high-yield destructiveness was inefficiently radiated upwards into space. So that sentence is very important too. I'm going to read that one again. Much of its high-yield destructiveness was inefficiently radiated upwards into space, meaning that a lot of the destruction didn't get radiated up into space, that it came down onto the planet. It has been estimated that detonating the original 100 megaton design would have released fallout amounting to about 25% of all fallout emitted since the invention of nuclear weapons. It was decided that a full megaton detonation would create too great a risk of nuclear fallout, as well as near certainty that the released plane and crew would be destroyed before it could escape the blast radius. The Tsar Bomba was the culmination of a series of high-yield nuclear weapons designed by the Soviet Union and the United States during the 1950s. And just as a footnote, it says this video, the footage from a Soviet documentary about the bomb is featured in Trinity and Beyond, the atomic bomb movie, where it is referred to as the Russian monster bomb. The video states that the Tsar Bomba project broke the voluntary moratorium on nuclear tests. In fact, Soviets restarted their tests and broke the unilateral voluntary moratorium 30 days before Tsar Bomba, testing 45 times in that month. That's more than one a day. Since the moratorium was unilateral, there was no multilateral legal obstacle. And anyway, it goes on and on. So, there's that. So that's our background. And now we're going to go back to Google Earth. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to trace my footsteps on how I came to everything that I came to, so that you can understand it too. So I'm looking on Google Earth, and I saw these are earthquakes. Now, and it also tells, and when you click on it, like here's a 4.8 Novaya Zemlya, and there's the date. Look, October 27th, 1973. Okay, that's interesting. And I didn't notice any earthquakes that were recent. I clicked on a whole bunch of these earthquake signs, and there weren't any very recent. And see, here's some up here by that division. Here, okay, here's a 5.9. Let's see when that was. Oh, October 21st, 1967. That's interesting. And so forth. And so then I saw these little guys, and these are notes. Okay. And this is from this user from Google Forums, Google Earth Community, LMCTKE. And it says worldwide nuclear testing. Well, of course I had to click on that. I couldn't stop. And here's his note coming up. And he says a KEMZ file concerning the locations of all nuclear testing. All the atomic detonations known to have occurred from 1945 through 2009. Etc., etc., etc. So, I downloaded it. I downloaded that database, and anybody can download that. So I downloaded it, and then I opened it onto Google Earth. I'm going to go back to Google Earth, and now I'm going to show you here's our nuclear testing database that we're going to overlay onto Google Earth. And now we're going to get rid of that sidebar. And look at this. Now, I'm not saying the United States is blameless, but at least we weren't testing in the Arctic Ocean. I mean, we did bad stuff too. I mean, we're not blameless by any means. And I think the nuclear bomb is a satanic device. I think it was divined by the dark mind, and I just think it's from Satan. I'll just be straight up. And for those people who don't like me talking religious or anything like that, it's just too bad. But I can't think of anything any other way to describe it, because this was horrendous. What we've done to this planet, what the human species and the powers that be was the ones in control. And most of the human race are pretty okay. Most of them are pretty okay. Yeah, granted, a lot of them are clueless. Most of them are clueless. But the ones who are in charge are not clueless. And I believe that they are all controlled by the satanic dark mind. Proof, case in point, nuclear bombs. And not only that, but nuclear power plants that came into existence after all the nuclear bombs. After those kind of got shut down from all the different stuff, then they went to nuclear power plants, and that's killing the planet too. And I'll show you that too if you want to see it. So here's Novaya Zemlya. Let's scan out. And these colors, those all represent a different nuclear test. And this is on the database. This guy took a lot of time and energy to put this in here. And I'd like to thank him, whatever his name is. And the orange means that they were detonated above the ground, either at crater level or above the ground somehow. The purple indicate that they were underground. And so if they're underground, then, that means they're underground facilities, right? Tunnels, bases, underground facilities. And then you have a few, not very many, but a few that are blue. And the blue is a fizzle. See that blue there? The blue is a fizzle. That means it was non-productive. And see, that's a fizzle. And I'll show you what a fizzle is. Here's fizzle. Fizzles are dangerous too. A fizzle occurs when the detonation of a device for creating a nuclear explosion, such as a nuclear weapon, grossly fails to meet its expected yield. The cause or causes for the failure can be linked to improper design, poor construction, or lack of expertise. All countries that have had a nuclear weapons testing program have experienced some fizzles. A fizzle can spread radioactive material throughout the surrounding area, involve a partial fission reaction of the fissile material, or both. For practical purposes, a fizzle can still have considerable explosive yield when compared to conventional weapons. So, there's fizzles, and I'll put the links below. I always do. You can check all this out yourself. Do your own research. Don't be lazy. Don't let me be the only one doing this. I wish I weren't the only one doing this. But it's like, I feel like I am the only one doing this. So, and the size of the circle shows how big the bomb was. Like here's one from 1958, and it was 3 megaton. The MT reading across October 1958, 22nd, 1958, 3 megatons. These are all underground. All these purple ones are underground. So there's their underground facility there. Here, this one was underground, maybe in a little cove or cave or something. 2 kilotons. Down here on the southern part, we've got some underground ones here. 1973, 180 kilotons. 1974, 2 megatons. 1973, 4 megatons. And then you've got an earthquake right there too, a 6.7. 1974, hello. November 2nd, 1974. What was that date? And what was the date on this other? Okay. Let's go in further. Here's another one. 10 kilotons. So, all of this is releasing radioactive material. None of these are clean. Here's a picture. I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's bleak, but it's beautiful, and it's Mother Earth. There's a glacier. It's beautiful, and it's Mother Earth. Here's the coast. See how rocky and jagged it is? This is all mountainous here. Here's another picture. Here we'll go to the picture. Here's an airplane from that airport, the Rogachevo airport. Click on that. See, it tells when the photo was uploaded, July 17th, 2016. There's actually, I think there's an airplane museum there or something. I think I saw that. Anyway, let's look at this picture. Oh, there's a polar bear. See? Isn't that beautiful? And you can look at any of these little guys, and those are notes from the Google forum. And it's the same, but the testing has to do with the nuclear tests. So let's go up here, and I'm going to show you where the Tsar Bomba test was. Right there. See? You can read it. And there was more than one test here. We have to tilt. It's not really tilting. It's kind of, they're all lined up together here. But if you read from left to right, okay, USSR, 1961, 130, Tsar Bomba, October 30th, 1961, 58 megatons. Then on the October 23rd, 1961, there was a 13 megaton, 7 days before. Same place. Then there's actually a third one there, but I can't get to it right now. Here's September 1962, 2 megatons. September 1962, 10 megatons. October 1962, 1 megaton. September 1958, 1 megaton. October 1957, 3 megatons. and so forth. Here's another picture. Isn't that beautiful? That's tundra. That's the tundra. Here's another picture. Let's see if we can get that. Oh, that's beautiful, isn't it? I love the reflection there. So, and look at all of them that took place over the ocean. Here's a 21 megaton, October 1962. December 1962, 1 megaton. September 1961, 1 megaton. September 1962, 3 megatons. September 1962, 20 megatons. October 1961, 4 megatons. August 1962, 3 megatons. You know, I feel like I don't know what I feel like. I really had to take a lot of breaks while I was researching this. And I understand if you don't want to accept it and you don't want to look at all of this, but this is evidence. And with all of this nuclear radiation and radioactivity comes heat. And the heat, I mean, even if it just goes into the ocean, it doesn't go away. Look at this. Now this is interesting. Notice how I zoomed in here, and this is all one area, and when you're out way far, it just looks like a couple of dots there. But when you zoom in, look at this grid pattern. There are 31 nuclear tests, all in this same little grid pattern. 31. And the bigger ones, the bigger dots, supposedly represent the bigger tests. So many from the same time period. September 1962, 2 megatons. How big is this one? August 1962, 10 megatons. September 1962, 8 kilotons. And so forth. So, I just don't see that Mother Earth has any chance. And like Guy McPherson said in my first interview with him, I asked if he thought what he thought about Fukushima, if that could be heating the ocean, and he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely, it's heating the ocean and it's never stopping." And all of these are underground tests. This never stops. This stuff never stops. So you get the idea. Oh, and I did discover this. Was it here? Nested in the ice. No, that's not what I was going to show you. I have to go in. I did find some undersea volcanoes up here, but not very many. So that's for another show. Can't find them right now. So, you get the idea, right? So let's continue. This is going to be a long video, but I can't help it. I can't stop. This is all the foundation for my argument. Oh, wrong one. So don't go away yet. Oh, now here was something interesting. This is from the johnstonarchive.net, and this is the actual, if you go there, I'll leave the link below, but this Robert Johnston compiled this whole database of thousands and thousands and thousands of nuclear tests. I mean, it's amazing, and he's got it on this website, and then he's got some other stuff too. Here's his website with the nuclear test databases and other material, and he goes through like by country up until 1990, up into the early 90s. All the history of the tests and who did them and how big they were and what happened and stuff like that by country. And then down here he's got some supplemental material that I found very interesting. The Novaya Zemlya nuclear test of 1999. 1969. It happened on October the 14th, 1969. The location was Mototchkin Shar, Novaya Zemlya, Russia. So this was an underground test. Accidental radioactive release from underground nuclear test. And I'll show you where that is on Google Earth. It was right up here. Right. I did find it. Let me see. What was the date again? 1969. Oh, yeah, it was up here. I think. There. October 14th, 1969, unknown yield, total 540 kilotons. So it was right there. So here's what we're talking about. At 700 UT on October 14th, an underground nuclear test was conducted at the Mototchkin Shar region in Novaya Zemlya. 3 devices were detonated in 2 tunnels with a total yield of 540 kilotons. 1 device yielding between 20 and 150 kilotons, along with 1 device yielding between 150 and 370 kilotons in tunnel A7 at a depth of 500 meters, and 1 device yielding between 150 and 370 kilotons in tunnel A9 at a depth of 520 meters. There was 2 tunnels. At 1 hour after the test, a gas plume burst from the surface near tunnel A9. Factors in the early venting included reaction with carbon dioxide in the surrounding rocks, thermal weakening of the cement plug through the nuclear device, and gas escape facilitated along a fault in the side of the mountain. Several hundred test personnel were in the vicinity and were not evacuated until 40 to 60 minutes later. The response to the accident was confused, compounded by the early departure of those in authority. So the bigwigs ran out. On October 24th, so 10 days later, those more seriously exposed were transported to Moscow for examination and treatment. Over 80 people received doses of 40 to 80 rad. Unknown number of injuries. So several hundred test personnel were in the vicinity. That must be a pretty big facility. Several hundred people. But they were not evacuated until 40 to 60 minutes later, because the bigwigs left first. So there you go. So I'll leave links to all this stuff. And we'll take a break from that for a second. We're already over an hour. I told you this was going to be long. And we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to take a break from the nuclear testing. And we're going to look at power plants, because this plays in too. I found this map of worldwide power plants. And you can see that the majority of them are in the northern hemisphere, nuclear power plants. And when the atmosphere heats up to the point where the electricity stops or whatever, and these power plants, nuclear power plants, can't be cooled, and they are all cooled by water. They're all built on some water source, whether they're on a coastline or on a river. They all have to be cooled with water. And electricity is used to pump the water. And these nuclear power plants are to produce electricity, which is totally ridiculous. So here's all the different nuclear power plants around the world. And they're color coded, and you can click. Now the blue ones, the light blue ones, are the ones that are operating right now. The purple ones are the ones that are offline. The red ones have been shut down, and these black ones are under construction. So here's Fukushima, here's Japan, just for instance, okay? And we can zoom in and then go over. Now, just because I'm just going over here because we've heard so much about Fukushima, so let's see what's going on. And it tells the power plant Fukushima Daini 1 through 4 offline. It went offline March 15th, 2011. When all that stuff blew up. Here's a shutdown. But you know, when things go offline, like all those reactors and things, the rods are so hot they still have to be cooled. Of course, these are not being cooled, and the water is just spewing out into the ocean. A bunch of the rods have sunk down into the earth, and a real good person who does this follows the Fukushima meltdown, is Dana Durnford, and he has a couple of YouTube channels. And he has a website called Nuclear Proctologist. And I think he's the best. And he's a sailor, and he goes up and down the British Columbian coast, Canadian coast, and he's documenting the demise of all of the sea life and life on the coast. He's been doing that since 2011, and he's still doing it. He goes out every summer and documents it. But they're building new ones. They're building a new plant right there. Started in July of 2010. It's not online yet. Here's this one under construction. Started 2012 and 2014. Well, that's Korea. Here's one in Japan. Started in 2007. Anyway, I thought you'd find this interesting. But this does not tell us why. See, there are no nuclear power things up here at Novaya Zemlya, okay? So that's a separate issue, sort of. But look over here at all these nuclear power plants in Europe. And, of course, they're all on the coast there, or connected to these rivers. There's a whole bunch in England. And I'm leading up to something, and then you can see all these nuclear power plants, a whole bunch of them on the east side of the United States. Alright, so if you look at, where's my global methane? See the methane off the east coast? Yep. We've got nuclear power plants there. They all have to be cooled with water. The water heats up and it's dumped back. The heated water is dumped back into the ocean or the water supply. And, you can say, well, the ocean can absorb it. Well, it can't. And it just keeps adding. It's incremental, more and more and more. And see all this methane coming up off the European coastline, and here it just keeps adding up more and more and more. So that's another part of the puzzle, but that's not the whole thing. Here's another website that's really good. Number of nuclear reactors operable and under construction. This is from the World Nuclear Association. There are currently 447 operable civil nuclear power nuclear reactors around the world, with a further 61 under construction. A list of reactors operable, under construction, planned and proposed can be found here. And it's updated monthly. And so here's the total. That's not what I wanted. Operable. Operable means they're connected to the electricity grid. Civil means that they're used to make electricity. And then there are a lot of reactors that are used by universities and governments and stuff to power ships, submarines, and to make medical isotopes. So, it's a whole combo plate. Here's the reactor database. That's the one I wanted. 27 pages, 674. In the reactor database around the world, even if they've been shut down or decommissioned, they all have to stay cool. They all have toxic waste. They all have to be babysat. They all have to be maintained. Not for 5 years, not for 10 years, but forever. So there you go. Now, my next question was, do radioactive waste produce heat? And this is by Gordon Edwards from July 12, 2011. Once reactive materials have been created, nobody knows how to shut off the radioactivity. Radioactivity is caused by the spontaneous disintegration of unstable atoms. In fact, the unit of radioactivity is the becquerel, which indicates that one disintegration is taking place every second. If we knew how to shut off radioactivity, there would be no nuclear waste problem. In a nuclear reactor, under normal operation, more than 90% of the heat is produced by splitting uranium atoms. This process is called nuclear fission, and it can be stopped. That's why every reactor has control rods for slow shutdown and shut-off rods for fast shutdown. But the broken pieces of uranium atoms, the fragments that are left when uranium atoms have been split, are extremely radioactive, and that radioactivity cannot be shut off. So even after the fission process has been totally stopped, no more splitting of atoms, a lot of heat is still being produced by the disintegrating atoms of the radioactive waste materials in the core of the reactor. This unstoppable heat, due to radioactivity alone, is called decay heat. For example, in a 1,000 megawatt reactor, immediately after shutdown, the decay heat would be about 200 megawatts. And if the pumps do not keep pumping water through the core to remove that decay heat, the fuel will get hotter and hotter as more and more heat is added. So the temperature will rise higher and higher until the fuel itself begins to melt at about 2,800 degrees Celsius. The radioactive wastes inside a nuclear reactor are not just hot, but they actually generate heat, like a furnace that just never stops burning. So there is really no limit as to how hot the surroundings can get if that heat is allowed to keep building up. The waste from the core of a nuclear reactor that has recently been shut down generates so much heat that they will eventually melt through any container they are in, unless there is a method for removing the heat as it is being produced. That's why nuclear reactors need to keep pumping coolant through the core of the reactor for days and weeks after shutdown. Because of the decay heat, the irradiated fuel that is removed from the core of the reactor after it is used up or spent has to be stored in a deep pool of circulating water, which is used to cool the fuel for at least 7 to 10 years. If the fuel is uncovered during the first few years, it will slowly overheat and eventually damage its metallic container at hundreds of degrees Celsius and release a lot of radioactive gases and vapors into the air. The problem is that even though the fuel is spent, meaning the fission process no longer works well, it still contains an enormous quantity of radioactive junk, mostly the unstable broken pieces of atoms that are created when the atoms were split. These are called the fission products, and that's where the heat comes from the unremitting and unstoppable disintegration of trillions and trillions of unstable atoms. AECL has produced graphs showing how the decay heat from buried spent fuel will heat up the underground rock formations, which will finally return to their ambient level of temperature after about 50,000 years. So there's that. And we're almost done. There were several articles that were written as takeoff articles from this BBC News article from January of 2013. But this was the original article. And this is what makes my case, along with one more website I'm going to show you today. Russia explores old nuclear waste dumps in Arctic by Lawrence Peter, BBC News, January 25th, 2013. And here we have a picture of the Soviet K-27 submarine that was sunk in the Kara Sea in 1981 after a fatal nuclear leak. There's the submarine. The toxic legacy of the Cold War lives on in Russia's Arctic, where the Soviet military dumped many tons of radioactive hardware at sea. For more than a decade, Western governments had been helping Russia to remove nuclear fuel from decommissioned submarines docked in the Kola Peninsula, the region closest to Scandinavia. But further east lies an intact nuclear submarine at the bottom of the Kara Sea, and its highly enriched uranium fuel is a potential time bomb. This year, the Russian authorities went to see if the K-27 sub can be safely raised so that the uranium sealed inside the reactors can be removed. Remember, this was 2013. They also plan to survey numerous other nuclear dumps in the Kara Sea, where Russia's energy giant Rosneft and its U.S. partner ExxonMobil are now exploring for gas and oil. And here's a map. Does this look familiar? Here's Novaya Zemlya. These are all nuclear dump sites. On top of this being the whole testing area, here, and in the ocean here, and up here. And now they decided that they're going to explore for oil and gas in the Kara Sea, which happens to be the most radiated sea in the whole world. I read that somewhere. Seismic tests have been done, and drilling of exploratory wells is likely to begin next year, so Russia does not want any radiation hazard to overshadow that. Rosneft estimates the offshore fossil fuel reserves to be about 21.5 billion tons. So that's why they're doing this. They want the oil. In a statement to the BBC, ExxonMobil said that before drilling offshore, it is standard industry practice to conduct extensive studies at and below the seabed to check for hazards using tools including remote sonar and a magnetometer. It said Rosneft had also carried out a study focused on nuclear waste disposal in the Kara Sea. The two companies are confident that we can safely drill in the Kara Sea and avoid hazards from radioactive materials in the seabed, ExxonMobil said. The Kara Sea region is remote, sparsely populated, and bitterly cold, frozen over for much of the year. The hostile climate would make cleaning up a big oil spill hugely challenging, environmentalists say. Those fears were heightened recently by the Kuluk accident, a shell oil rig that ran aground in Alaska. But Charles Emerson, an Arctic specialist at the Chatham House think tank, says Arctic drilling is a strategic imperative for Russia, which relies heavily on oil and gas exports. It is a bigger priority for Russia than Alaskan energy is for the U.S., he says, because the U.S. now has a plentiful supply of shale gas. That and environmental concerns make the Arctic more problematic for Americans, he told BBC News. In the U.S., the Arctic gets great public scrutiny and it's highly political, but in Russia, there is less public pressure. Russia is rapidly developing the energy-rich Yamal Peninsula on the eastern shore of the Kara Sea. The retreat of Arctic summer sea ice, believed to be evidence of global warming, means liquefied natural gas tankers will be able to reach the Far East via Russia's Northern Sea route in future. On the western bank is a closed military zone, the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. Well, we know it's not closed. We know that. It's still operating. It was where the USSR tested hydrogen bombs above ground in the early days, and underground. Besides K-27, official figures show that the Soviet military dumped a huge quantity of nuclear waste in the Kara Sea, 17,000 containers and 19 vessels with radioactive waste, as well as 14 nuclear reactors, 5 of which contain hazardous spent fuel. Low-level liquid waste was simply poured into the sea. Norwegian experts in the International Atomic Energy Agency are satisfied that there's no evidence of a radiation leak. The Kara Sea's radioisotope levels are normal, but Ingar Amundsen, an official at the Norwegian Radiation Protection Authority, says more checks are needed. The risk of a leak through seawater corrosion hangs over the future, and that would be especially dangerous in the case of K-27, he told BBC News. You cannot exclude the possibility that there is more waste there which we don't know about, he said. Igor Kudryk of the Norwegian environmental group Bellona says there is even a risk that corrosion could trigger a nuclear chain reaction in the worst-case scenario. And finally, I wanted to find out exactly when the Arctic started warming. When did it start? When did it really start coming online as being warming so much faster? And so I did a search, and it says climate change in the Arctic. The Arctic region is warmer than it used to be, and it continues to get warmer. Over the past 30 years, it's warmed more than any other region on Earth. Most scientists agree that Arctic weather and climate are changing because of human-caused climate change. And there's a graph down here that shows the change really started in 1960. This whole chart and map shows from 1960 to 2011. And so all this nuclear testing up in the Kara Sea and on Novaya Zemlya started in the 50s, but it was mainly around the early 60s. And that's when the Arctic started warming. And see how red it is? See how red it is all the way across the Arctic? And so, says this image shows trends in mean surface air temperature over the period 1960 to 2011. Notice that the Arctic is red, indicating that the trend over this 50-year period is for an increase in air temperature of more than 2 degrees centigrade across much of the Arctic, which is larger than for other parts of the globe. The inset shows linear trends over the period by latitude. So there you go. More than 2 degrees centigrade in the Arctic in 50 years. So that's my case. I believe my theory is that the Arctic started warming up when these nuclear tests started happening, and then all the stuff was dumped in the sea here. I mean, and it just keeps heating and heating and heating, and it's not going to go away. And as things get hotter, then things keep, I mean, that submarine and all these other nuclear reactor rods and crap that are on the ocean, there's frozen permafrost down there. There's permafrost all over the place. There's stored methane 1 million years old, just waiting to be melted, just waiting to heat up enough to be released. Just waiting. So I think we're doomed. And I don't think we have much longer. I really don't think we have much longer. I hope we don't. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of all of this. I just want to go home, wherever home is. And Google Earth is shutting down. Of course. But guess what? I got it recorded. I got my show made. I got it recorded. I'll probably divide this up into 2 or 3 parts. I really don't think we have much longer. And when Guy McPherson said that when everything starts heating up and all these nuclear reactors start going off around the world, it's game over. It's game over. And there's going to be so much nuclear radiation, ain't nothing going to be left. I don't care where you're located. Ain't nothing going to be left. And if you're in an underground bunker, eventually you got to come out. And it's going to be a radioactive wasteland. 50,000 years. How do you like them apples? And frankly, you know, I'm ready to go anytime. I'd be so happy to get out of here. But this is the truth. This is the truth. And I believe, and I'm going to preach now, so thank you for listening. I believe that we're in a battle for good and evil. And if you can't see this, I don't know how better to explain this. Humans didn't think this up by themselves. They had to be guided by a dark, evil force, the dark satanic mind. And I believe by bad aliens. And I think there are good aliens too, good ETs. I mean, I've got my own experiences. And I think we are spiritual beings. And I do believe we're in a matrix. And it's a simulation. But it's real. It's real to us. And I do believe that we're in a battle for souls. And Satan is trying to get everyone distracted. And so you think you're going to save the planet by not drinking plastic out of plastic straws? Give me a break. You think you're going to save the planet by not driving your car? That's bullshit. You know, when I looked at this, it's like nothing else matters. I mean, this is the smoking gun, folks. All that stuff is just waiting to go off. And for all I know, it is going off. Or melting through the permafrost and the ice enough so that all that methane is starting to be released. I mean, I'm ready to go. I can't take much more of this. I just can't. And anybody who tries to leave a negative comment about my voice or how distressed I sound, you know, they're going to be blocked. I'm tired. I'm not going to take this crap. This is the truth. And if you can't see the truth, then it's not my fault. I've done my part. I've done my part to try and show people the truth. And Jesus said, I am the truth, the light, and the way. And the only way to the Father is through me. So my name's Margo. I'm a hypnotist, holistic life coach, empathic spiritual healer. My website is margoshealingcorner.com. I encourage you to get your spiritual house in order. Time is short, folks. Figure out how you're going to spend your last few days. Thank you for listening. God bless. Goodbye.